Well, the next big conference realignment domino to fall might actually come from the ACC. More on that coming up here in this video. I am John Kurtz. Here on this channel, I talk college football from a Big 12 slant, college football, college hoops, conference realignment. You're going to get all of that here on this channel. I'm live twice a week and drop other content like this in throughout. Please consider subscribing and make sure you click that bell so you know when it is that I'm going live and when it is that I'm dropping content. Well, a lot of the focus in the conference realignment world lately has obviously been on the Pac-12 as they try to finally get their media rights deal, which has been going on for a long time. And speculation has been the four corner schools might jump to the Big 12, but now in comes the ACC, an entity that has not been talked about as much in realignment because of a binding grant of rights and TV contract that goes through 2036 and will keep the league right now paid basically the same level that it's at, which is on the level of the Big 12 and Pac-12. In essence, well behind their peers in the SEC and the Big Ten. And that does not seem to be sitting well with Florida State or Clemson, as you might imagine. But for the first time, we're getting some public quotes about this. We start with Florida State. This story from the Tampa Bay Times says Florida State Athletic Director Michael Alford told his Board of Trustees Friday that, quote, something has to change as it relates to the revenue gap between the ACC and other growing leagues in the Power Five. Alford said Florida State stands to receive about $30 million less annually than its peers in the SEC and the Big Ten, both of which are expanding in 2024. Quote, right now, when you throw everything in, we receive about $42 million, Alford told the board. That would put us literally $30 million behind our competitors and peers across the country, and that's $30 million every year. Alford noted that the Seminoles are one of the biggest brands in the ACC in terms of exposure, and that they, quote, drive the media value in this conference. I wouldn't really disagree with him too much there. I mean, Clemson has been the one doing the heavy lifting in the ACC for a while now, since, I don't know, when did Bobby Bowden leave? But Florida State is still a brand. Mike Norvell seems to be doing a good job in turning around the program, and they would be one of the most valuable entities in that conference. No doubt they're doing more for the conference than, I understand they've been better at football here recently than like a Wake Forest, a Boston College, etc., etc. More from the article, it says he went on to say that it would be, quote, impossible to compete nationally with such a revenue disparity, prompting one board member to ask about the feasibility of Florida State leaving the conference. Now, there's the million-dollar question, right? What would it actually cost us to leave the conference? And, quote, that is an excellent question, FSU General Counsel and Vice President Carolyn Egan answered. Egan and Alford then explained it would cost about $120 million for Florida State to leave the ACC. But that is only the exit fee part of the scenario. We've also got the grant of rights, and that's what the article points out next. Then there's still a matter of the ACC's grant of media rights. As it currently stands, if Florida State were to leave the ACC, the conference would control its media rights until 2036, right? That's the idea. If you went to another conference, you wouldn't be able to profit off of those media rights. It would go back to your former conference. The article mentions Texas and Oklahoma negotiated an early exit with the Big 12, allowing the schools to take control of their media rights as they move to the SEC, but it will cost them $100 million to do so. Alford, back to the Florida State part of the equation here, Alford said the Seminoles represent, quote, 70% more viewers than a typical ACC school and generate about 15% of the ACC's media rights revenue. Quote, but we only get 7% of the distribution, Alford said. So he's basically saying, look, we're doing twice what we're being compensated for here. We should be paid twice as much as we really are. If we're getting 15% of the ACC's media rights revenue and we're only getting 7% of the distribution, that's a problem. Basically, he's just pointing out kind of the college athletics model. I mean, you have this in every single league. Texas and Oklahoma will be quick to tell you, we subsidized that league for years with our brands. And you would hear the same. I mean, Ohio State, Michigan, they're doing it for the Big Ten. Alabama, Georgia, LSU, doing it for the SEC. Meanwhile, you've got Vanderbilt and Missouri farting around there at the bottom of the conference, right? That's just how it goes. But this is definitely the time where it's being more magnified than ever because of the gap that's starting to take off between the Big Ten, the SEC, and everybody else. Alford, to close it off on Florida State here, Alford said he's working with the ACC on, quote, how to create a revenue distribution model that takes into factors who you are, how you play, what your brand is. But he's not sure if it will come to fruition. All right, so Alford said, this is worded a little bit weird. Alford said he's working with the ACC on how to create a revenue distribution model that takes into account who you are, how you play, what your brand is. Not sure, though, if that'll come to fruition. I mean, if I'm the ACC, I guess there are a couple calculations I'm making here. How confident do I feel in this grant of rights actually holding up? Like, do I feel like there's any vulnerability to them deciding to leave and then just fighting it out in court? And if I do feel like there's any doubt, any chink in that armor, I would definitely be working with Florida State and Clemson on something right now on making them happy and figuring it out. It's a dangerous road to go down, as we've seen with the Big 12 with Texas. Not that the revenue sharing was necessarily unequal, though they did make more money off of the Longhorn Network, right? They were allowed to have that. So in essence, I guess you did have unequal revenue there, but really more just about like power and who gets to boss everybody around and throw their weight around. That turned into a massive problem. It was an albatross on the league for years, but it was also kind of a necessary evil if you wanted Texas in the conference. And right now the ACC's got to be looking at it like, well, if we don't feel totally like that's an ironclad thing in court, the grant of rights and whatever through 2036, then we better do what we can to help out these schools and keep them around as long as possible. And that's the name of the game right now. You've kind of got to do what you got to do for survival. And that's why I just think the circumstances are so much different now. The stakes are higher than they've ever been in college athletics. And so that's going to change how everybody has to respond. On the Clemson front, they certainly are jumping in on this too. They made 6 straight college football playoff appearances at one point. So if there's anybody that has a right to be mad and throw their weight around, it would be Clemson at the moment. And when asked if unequal distribution was a want or a need, Clemson Athletic Director Graham Neff chose the stronger of the two words. And this article is coming from one of the local papers down in South Carolina. The Post and Courier. The Post and Courier. All right, so when asked if unequal distribution was a want or a need, Clemson AD Graham Neff said, "In all candor, I put it as a need." All right, not a want, that's a need for Clemson, which you read into that, I mean, that's kind of threatening, right? This is a need. We've got to have this or else we've got problems. He said, quote, "We certainly recognize the investment that we've continued to make as an institution in our community, in athletics, namely in football, which certainly drives a lot of value that is important from a TV and revenue generation standpoint." Further on this quote, he says, "Is it time revenue distribution within conferences, or at least the ACC, is done differently? Yeah, I've been very active in those conversations within the league and continue to expect to take a leadership role in our desire for that to be a changed circumstance. Urgently, adds that at the end, urgently." So Clemson has said it's a need, and they need it urgently. Strong words, very strong words from Clemson there. Florida State and Clemson now maybe partners in crime here like Texas and Oklahoma, USC, UCLA. I think we're kind of on the clock now to start watching this and monitoring this situation as things move forward, that this could be the next big domino to fall when it comes to conference realignment. To close out the article here in the Post and Courier, says Clemson has scrutinized the grant of rights to better understand what the financial penalties might be if there came a time to consider an ACC exit. Regardless of whether it's feasible to depart, what Neff can do as Clemson's AD is advocate for unequal distribution of conference revenues, which could offer the Tigers more slices of the pie that's currently available. Of course, the prospect of fewer dollars for less successful ACC schools might be a hard sell, but in a landscape where stability is a cherished resource, keeping brands like Clemson, Florida State, and Miami in the fold could be beneficial for all. Neff also argues that uneven distribution incentivizes athletic departments to invest more and earn their cut. I mean, the part about that with Neff, I'm like, okay, sure. Like, say, yeah, it just means you guys need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and invest more and it'll be okay. I mean, that's not really how it works. We've seen schools that do a hell of a job in terms of actual accomplishments on the field that just still don't have that big of a brand, right? Like Utah, been great in the Pac-12, but they're not commanding a bunch of attention right now from the Big Ten and the SEC, even though they've been winning the Pac-12 and going and losing Rose Bowls every single year. You don't see that because they just don't, even if they're pulling their own weight on the field, they don't have that sort of value off the field. So there are just some inherent advantages there that a lot of the schools are going to have and makes it unfair, but college athletics, I guess, has always kind of been that way. So anyway, I think this is one that you need to pay attention to. These are very, very important quotes and just statements that are coming out of the Clemson and Florida State athletic departments here. And really, it's like everything is kind of out in the open now. Like there's not, we all speculate about what's going on behind the scenes. No, everyone's being pretty clear about how they're feeling. In Pac-12 country, we're getting quotes from ADs and presidents that they're frustrated with what's going on with the media deal. And now in the ACC, they're clearly frustrated with what's going on in their deal that has them locked into 2036. It's just the first time really we've heard this sort of thing from ACC country. We'll see if we get some more. I'll keep you updated on it here on the channel. Please do subscribe if you haven't yet. Big 12 football, college football, conference realignment all week here on this channel. I'm live twice a week. The live shows are a blast. And then I drop content like this. Make sure you click the bell to know when it is that I'm dropping content. Support the channel on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4 if you would like, and follow me on Twitter at JOKurtz. Take care. I will talk to you guys later.